Love is merely the trick nature plays to ensure the continuation of the species. Arthur Schopenhauer. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. It all begins with cold. Not with poetry, not with flowers, not with candlelight promises. Just cold. The kind that seeps through skin and bone. The kind that reminds every creature on this planet, alone, you don't last long. Back in the beginning, there was no such thing as romance, no heart-shaped illusions or lifelong dreams. There was only danger, hunger, nightfall, and the need for someone to watch your back while you sleep. You didn't pair up because of love. You paired up because the wolves were real, the winters were brutal, and dying alone was far too easy. What we now call connection was in truth a survival strategy. You shared your fire because two bodies meant more heat. You kept close not out of emotional depth, but because distance could mean death. Every touch, every bond, every moment of intimacy had one silent goal: live longer, stay alive. Nature didn't design you to be in love. It designed you to cling, to attach yourself to someone who could increase your chances. That was the rule etched into your nervous system. Don't be alone. Don't drift. Find a body. Stay close, or you die. Thousands of years later, the wolves may be gone, but the code hasn't changed. It's still running. You see it in wedding vows, in honeymoon photos, in the way people panic at the idea of growing old without a partner. Beneath the music, the rituals, the Instagram posts, it's the same ancient signal playing over and over: connect or perish. The body remembers the cold. It remembers what it felt like to be exposed, to be unprotected. So it pushes you, subtly, chemically, relentlessly, to seek closeness. It tricks you with sweetness. The rush of attraction, the butterflies, they're not magic. They're a hormonal cocktail designed to trap you in a bond strong enough to ensure reproduction. You don't choose this. It's built into your biology. The body doesn't ask for kindness or compatibility. It asks for traits, symmetry, fertility, strength, health, the things that signal survival potential. And when it finds them, it floods your brain with pleasure, pulls you in, and whispers, "This one will keep you alive." This is where love begins, not in a poem, in fear, in need, in that ancient animal urgency to not face the world alone. It's not evil, it's not fake, it's just primal. So before anything else, love was never about hearts. It was about flesh. It was about silence, broken by another breath next to yours. It was the absence of isolation, the safety of proximity. You may dress it up now, call it sacred, paint it with dreams, but deep inside, the oldest part of you is still that shivering creature by the fire, looking for someone, anyone, to keep the dark away. Love feels personal, intimate, sacred, but peel back the language, the music, the daydreams, and what you'll find is machinery, pure, cold biology, the kind that doesn't care about your feelings, only your function. Love, at its core, is not poetry. It's a chemical weapon designed by evolution. When you feel attraction, it's not the soul recognizing its match. It's your brain detecting survival value. Your body picks up thousands of subtle signals: symmetry in the face, tone in the voice, scent in the skin. You're not consciously evaluating any of it, but deep in your limbic system, a calculation is happening. This one looks like strong genes. This one smells like healthy offspring. This one feels safe. And when the match is promising enough, your brain rewards you. It floods you with dopamine, The same chemical released during gambling, drug use, or achieving goals. You don't fall in love. You get chemically high. It's not a choice, it's a reflex. Then comes oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It makes you trust, open up, feel close. It's released during sex, cuddling, even eye contact. Vasopressin adds possessiveness. Serotonin pulls you into obsession. The brain cooks up a perfect illusion. You feel enchanted, consumed, addicted. But it's not magic, it's design. Evolution didn't want you happy. It wanted you attached, because attachment increases the odds of keeping a child alive long enough to repeat the cycle. That's all. We are walking algorithms for survival. Love is one of our most powerful scripts, and it's efficient. It makes you ignore red flags. It convinces you to stay. It tells you that this person is everything. And when they leave, it hurts, not by accident. Pain reinforces the bond. It makes the connection feel deeper, more significant, more real. But it's just withdrawal. Even heartbreak is part of the mechanism. The same parts of the brain that activate during physical pain light up during a breakup. The system treats separation like a wound. You crave them the way a starving person craves food. The program keeps running because evolution doesn't care about your peace. It only cares about your continuity. This is why people go back to toxic partners, why we rewrite memories, why we romanticize suffering. The chemicals don't distinguish healthy from harmful. They just reward proximity and punish separation. That's the loop. That's the trap. Love is not something you fall into. It's a design you get pulled into. Not by your soul, by your biology. You never fall in love with a person. You fall in love with an image your mind creates, a projection, a dream wrapped around someone else's face. And most of the time, you're not even aware you're doing it. From early childhood, your nervous system collects patterns. It memorizes how it feels to be safe, to be seen, to be hurt, to be ignored. These impressions form the blueprint for what you later call love. It's not about the other person. It's about who they remind you of, what they represent. You're not just looking for a partner. You're searching for a resolution, a way to re-experience what was missing, or what once felt good and is now gone. You think you're choosing freely, but what you're really doing is chasing a familiar emotional shape. When you meet someone new, your mind doesn't see them clearly. It overlays an image, maybe of your mother's tenderness, or your father's absence, or a childhood moment you barely remember. You want them to be your safe place, your mirror, your home. But that expectation is heavy, and it distorts everything. This is where the illusion begins. You believe they complete you. You believe their presence fills something empty inside. But what actually happens is that they activate your inner wounds, the ones you've carried quietly for years. The chemistry feels intense, not because they're your soulmate, but because your nervous system recognizes a pattern and wants to fix it. So you call it love, you call it destiny, but underneath, it's trauma reenactment. It's your psyche trying to repair what was broken by recreating the same wound, hoping for a different ending. This is why relationships become chaotic. The moment reality breaks the projection, the illusion cracks. You see them as they are, not who you wanted them to be. And the pain starts, because the person you thought you loved was never really there. You loved a version of them that lived only in your mind. And that's terrifying, because it means you weren't seen either. You were projecting, they were projecting, and neither of you truly met the other. Just two people looking for old ghosts in new bodies, yet we repeat it again and again, because the mind craves resolution. It wants to win the battle it lost long ago, And love, in this form, becomes an arena, a place where your wounds fight to be heard, to be healed, to be held. But healing doesn't happen this way, not through someone else, not through merging. It begins when you stop searching outside, when you face the mirror without filters, when you stop needing someone to save you from yourself. Only then does love stop being an escape and start becoming a choice. Love wears many masks, but one of the oldest is control, and it hides well. It hides behind words like care, loyalty, responsibility. But underneath, there's always the same engine running: fear. Most people don't crave love itself. They crave what love promises: safety, stability, predictability, a shield from the unknown. And the moment love becomes a tool to secure that, it turns into control. At first, it looks like affection. You want to know where they are, what they're doing, who they're talking to. You tell yourself it's because you care. But your nervous system is scanning for threats. The fear of loss, of betrayal, of change. It burns quietly under the surface. So you manage. You ask questions. You make rules. You demand clarity, loyalty, confirmation. Not because you're bad, because your system associates love with survival. Losing it feels like dying. This is how manipulation often begins. Not with cruelty, but with fear. We try to control the other person because we feel unsafe without them. And if they start pulling away, we pull harder. Guilt becomes a tool. Silence becomes punishment. Closeness becomes a transaction. If you love me, you'll do this. If you care, you'll stop doing that. And slowly, love becomes a contract filled with invisible terms. It happens in families. Parents say, "I love you," but mean, "Do what I say." Partners say, "I want the best for you," but mean, "Stay within my comfort zone." People confuse love with obedience, presence with ownership. The fear of being abandoned turns affection into surveillance. Even culturally, we're conditioned to believe that love equals possession, that you belong to someone, that being loved means being needed, that jealousy proves something. But in reality, all of that is just the survival brain clinging to its source of safety. It's not love. It's dependency, wrapped in intensity. And it's hard to see, because it feels real. The panic, the longing, the anger, they all scream that love is at stake. But what's really at stake is the illusion of control. You're not afraid of losing them. You're afraid of facing life without the anchor they became. That's why breakups feel like free fall. It's not just the end of a relationship. It's the collapse of a system your body depended on. It's the nervous system going into shock, searching for a new place to feel safe. This is why many people rush into another relationship right after. Not because they've healed, but because the survival program kicks in. Find someone new. Secure attachment. Restore balance. Until love becomes a choice, not a lifeline, it will always carry chains. It will always be wrapped in rules, expectations, and unspoken fear. True love doesn't need to grip. It doesn't ask for reports. It doesn't punish silence, because it doesn't depend on control to feel safe. But to reach that place, something has to die. The belief that love should save you. There comes a moment when everything collapses. The person you counted on leaves. The feeling you thought would last forever fades. The illusion cracks, and you're left with silence. Not peace, not relief, just silence. At first, it feels unbearable, like something inside you is dying. You try to fill it with noise, with people, with distractions, but nothing works. Because the pain isn't about what you lost, it's about what was hiding underneath all along, your own absence. Most people aren't afraid of being alone. They're afraid of meeting themselves, afraid of the voice that starts to speak when the external world goes quiet. That voice doesn't tell you what you want to hear. It tells you the truth. It reveals the dependencies, the patterns, the desperation that once wore the mask of love. And it's in that moment, in the rawness of being truly alone, that the real work begins. Because if you can survive that emptiness without running, you begin to see something powerful. You realize that what you were chasing in others was never about them. It was about trying to escape yourself, to borrow strength, to outsource comfort, to feel safe through someone else's presence. But safety that depends on another person is never real. It can be taken away, it can be manipulated, and it always carries fear. When you stop running, you discover something strange. The silence that felt like death begins to soften. It becomes space, space to breathe, to feel, to rebuild. And in that space, you meet someone new, yourself, unfiltered. You begin to notice your own rhythms, your own needs, not the ones shaped by craving or fear, but the quiet, steady ones that don't beg for attention. You learn to sit with sadness without collapsing, to feel joy without needing a witness, to move through the world without asking for permission. This is not isolation, it's transformation. Loneliness becomes solitude. Solitude becomes clarity. Clarity becomes power. And from that power, something radical emerges, a love that doesn't come from lack, a love that doesn't cling, doesn't demand, doesn't collapse under pressure. It doesn't need, it simply exists. You stop looking for someone to complete you. You're already whole. You stop needing constant reassurance. You trust your own presence. You stop chasing connection. And connection, ironically, begins to find you. Because people can feel when you no longer need them to be okay. You stop being a weight. You become a space. And in that space, real love, if it ever comes, has room to breathe. But even if it doesn't, you're no longer afraid. The most dangerous thing about loneliness is that it hides your strength. But if you walk through it, without numbing, without running, it becomes the place where you find your deepest self. And once you've found that, no love can ever cage you again. After the silence, after the collapse, something changes. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or sudden clarity. It arrives quietly, a shift in the way you exist. You no longer search for someone to hold your broken pieces. You've held them yourself. You no longer need someone to complete your story. You've learned how to live without one. What grows now is presence, not built on fantasy or longing, but on grounded being. This kind of presence doesn't chase. It doesn't perform. It doesn't ask, "Am I enough?" It simply is. And because it's not driven by fear or need, it carries a different energy, calm, clear, unshakable. You start to see love not as something to earn or keep, but something to live from. Not a destination, but a frequency. Not a rescue, but a reflection. When you walk into a room with this energy, people feel it. Not because you're trying to be seen, but because you no longer fear being invisible. You radiate something clean. Not performance, not manipulation, not seduction, just presence. And this changes everything. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You don't chase what doesn't nourish you. You stop shrinking to fit into places where your silence is more welcome than your truth. Because now, you're anchored, not to another person, to yourself. You may still want connection, Of course, you may still enjoy closeness, softness, even romance, but you no longer need it to survive. That difference, that tiny shift, changes the entire structure of your relationships. You stop entering them as a beggar. You show up as a whole, and that wholeness invites something rare: connection without entanglement, intimacy without loss of self. This is not the kind of love we're taught to chase. It's not intense. It doesn't burn. It doesn't promise to fill every void. But it's real. It's clean. It's quiet. And in that quiet, there's strength. You realize that love isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you bring with you. It flows through you, in the way you listen, speak, move, in the way you honor your own energy, in the way you hold space for life, without grabbing at it. You begin to love without needing to possess. You begin to care without collapsing into someone else's storm. You remain open, but not exposed. Soft, but not empty. This is where maturity lives. Not in how much you love, but in how you love. In the quality of your presence. In the silence beneath your words. In the depth that asks for nothing, yet gives everything. And the irony is, once you become this version of yourself, you attract completely different people. Not those who need to feed on your light, but those who already carry their own. Not those who demand to be saved, but those who have also walked through their own fire. And when two people like that meet, love isn't survival anymore. It becomes something else entirely. Now you've seen it, the machinery, the instincts, the programming, everything that hides beneath the word love. For most people, it begins and ends with survival. The need to attach, to be seen, to not be alone in a world that feels too much. Love, for many, is the safest drug. It regulates the nervous system, gives purpose, grants identity, and in that way, it works like any survival mechanism. It pulls two people together not because they understand each other, but because their wounds match, their fears align, their chemistry speaks louder than truth. This kind of love feels intense, addictive, consuming. You ache for their presence. You fear their silence. You crave their attention like breath. But behind that fire, there's always a shadow. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. And that's the first sign. It's not real love. It's survival. You don't love them. You need them. You need what their presence gives you. A role to play, a wound to distract from, a mirror to remind you who you think you are. That's why it burns out. That's why it turns toxic. That's why it ends in control, jealousy, heartbreak. Because survival-based love doesn't have space for freedom. It grasps, it binds, it demands. But there is another kind. Real love is not built on fear. It's not built on possession or performance or the fantasy of saving or being saved. Real love begins where survival ends. When you're no longer using another person to escape yourself, a new kind of connection becomes possible. This love is calm, grounded, not because it lacks passion, but because it doesn't depend on chaos to feel alive. It's not about filling a void. It's about sharing from overflow. You don't need them to make you whole. You bring your own wholeness to the table. It's not fragile. It doesn't break under pressure. It doesn't cling when space is needed. Because real love knows space is not a threat. It's a sign of trust. You can stand apart without falling apart. This kind of love listens more than it speaks. It sees the other as they are, not as you wish them to be. It doesn't try to fix, control, or rewrite them. It respects the path, even when it's different. It holds you gently, but never traps. And most importantly, it invites growth. It doesn't fear your evolution. It welcomes it. It doesn't punish your expansion. It supports it. Because real love is not afraid of change. It's made of it. But here's the truth. To reach this kind of love, you have to walk through fire. You have to strip away every illusion. You have to meet your own loneliness, your own hunger, your own shadows, and stop asking someone else to heal them. You have to become what you're looking for. Only then can you love without losing yourself. Only then can you give without collapsing. Only then do you stop surviving love and start living it. So now ask yourself, when you've loved in the past, was it from fear, from emptiness, from the desperate need to feel seen, needed, chosen? Or was it from fullness, from peace, from already knowing your own worth? Be honest. That answer matters because it shows you where you are and where you can go. And if you take one thing from all of this, let it be this. Real love is not a feeling. It's a frequency, a way of being. It's not something you fall into. It's something you rise into. You don't find it by searching. You become it by healing. And the more you live from that place, the less you'll settle for anything less. So now you know. You've seen both worlds, survival love and soul love. One burns fast and dies young. The other glows steady and transforms everything it touches. Choose wisely. We're sure you've discovered plenty of value, so subscribe now and stay connected.